Josh Robb
And Austin Wilson.
from Hixon Zuercher Capital Management, bringing you the June market update as we look back at the month of May and see what has happened and what we see around the world.
So,
Yes,
starting with May.
May.
It's going to be May.
It's going to be May.
It's going to be May. So, May performance was a little bit better than performance we've been seeing lately. The S&P 500, it was up.
Ooh,
Yeah,
up. I haven't heard that word in a while.
Up 0.18%, so not much, but it was up.
It's positive.
NASDAQ was still down
Okay.
1.93,
Yep.
but hey, that's a lot less than it has been down. The Dow was up 0.33%. The small cap stocks were up 0.15%. Emerging market stocks, they were up 0.47%. International stocks, 0.73%. And even bonds.
Bonds were positive.
Bonds were up too. Bonds were up 0.76%. So May was a much better month than a couple months prior. So that left us feeling a little bit better.
There you go. My stories are going to be all across the board today.
Oh, wait,
This
that's
fun
nothing
stuff.
new.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
This one actually you sent me, and it kind of hit close to home in that the person involved was from Ohio.
Well, they
which
were
we're
very
both
clear
from.
to point that out.
They were like this Ohio woman who didn't know what she was doing. She was out at Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
Great park. Trees, stuff like that. So she saw some animals. Thought I'd go visit them, right? And don't go near the bears because they're mean. But she saw a bison.
They're tame. Don't
And
worry
they're
about
like,
it.
they eat grass. What
Yeah.
can you do? They're so big, they got to be slow. Well, she got too close, and bison, surprisingly, can run 3 times as fast as humans.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't know that. But tossed her, or gored her, I guess would be the term since they have horns,
Yeah.
10 feet in the air. Yeah. So stay away from bison.
Well, it's funny. So she's giving Ohio people a bad name
Yes.
because most Ohio people, I would assume, would not do that. So let's just say that that's not because she's from Ohio.
Yes.
The second of all, I read that she was within 10 feet of the bison itself.
Yes.
That's really close.
Yeah.
And, fun fact, bison are the cause of more injuries in
Than any other
those
animal.
parks than any other animals. So,
Yes.
don't take bison,
No.
not seriously.
Yes.
They're the real deal.
Now, the rumor was she yelled to her kids while she was flying through the air, "Bye, son."
It's the
That's a
rumor.
rumor. I
It's
don't know if it's true.
unverified.
I don't know if it's true.
Unverified.
I just heard it somewhere.
Next up, we have to talk about inflation and the Federal Reserve's response because that is a continually evolving landscape. So, April inflation, which is the month we got in
We're always
May,
delayed. Yep.
that came in at 8.3%.
Okay.
It's really high,
Yes.
but
Lower.
it's 0.2% better than we had in March, which was 8.5%. And this is a sign that inflation may have peaked at that 8.5% level in March, but still does remain at really 40-year highs.
Yes.
So that's definitely a cause for concern. So in response to that, the Federal Reserve continues to want to tighten financial conditions, and they're doing this through a couple different things. They gave us another 0.5% interest rate hike on the short-term end of interest rates, and they're selling bonds into the bond market as a form of quantitative tightening to further tighten financial conditions. So the Federal Reserve is trying to respond to that really high inflation.
All right. So today we're recording this on National Donut Day. I don't know if you knew that,
what?
Austin. Yes, today's
You
National
have a nice
Donut Day.
mug.
I do have my donut mug. But along with that, the story: a small town in Indiana has now the Guinness World Record for most donuts sold in one day. 8,558 donuts.
Whoa.
It was done in Angola, Indiana,
Yeah.
at a place called Tom's Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
I've eaten there.
And
I used to live over there, just a little ways away from
Pretty
there.
good.
Good donuts. It's in this nice little square area, pretty cool downtown. But they had this big thing, and they broke the record, and so pretty exciting. That's a lot of donuts. Yes.
that is a lot of donuts. I'm in the mood for a donut. Maybe next donut day we'll actually
man.
have to have donuts on the video here. Thanks for bringing one, Josh.
Yes.
Number 3, we're going to call it Intraday Bear. Intraday Bear. On April 20th, the S&P 500 dipped into a bear market on an intraday basis, which means not on the end of the day when the market closed basis, but at some point during the day, the market went down 20% from its all-time high.
Yep.
More than 20% from its all-time high. But because we did not close there, a lot of people do not count it as an official bear market. However, it still felt pretty bear market-like. And it's been a long, slow process to get down there for a few months. However, it was followed by one of the best weeks the market has seen really since the rebound in 2020.
Yep.
And that's actually caused equity markets to not be anywhere near 20% from their all-time highs.
Yeah.
So,
And as we know, some of the best days happen close to and around that bottom and the worst days in the market.
Which is why the keep invested plan is the one that usually works out the best.
All right. So, story overseas now.
Okay.
Global look
We're
here.
going travel.
All right. A man was detained after he tried to. It was a protest about climate and what was going on. He threw cake at the Mona Lisa, and he was able to get there because he was wearing a wig and in a wheelchair. So he really thought through this. Like he put his disguise on and everything.
Yeah.
Snuck up, then threw cake on the Mona Lisa, and then he was since detained and sent to a psychiatric ward for evaluation.
Yeah.
This is not the first brush with death. You see what I did
Brush
there? With the
with
painting. Brush with death. It had an acid attack a while back from someone else, and was actually stolen for a couple of years as well, and eventually returned. Caught because they tried to sell it on the black market.
So here's the question.
It's covered by protective class now.
So the cake didn't even have
The cake has zero, yeah.
So what does throwing a piece of cake at a glass protected very valuable painting do for climate change? Nothing. So don't throw cake at a valuable
painting.
Get
him his on the TV, then he could yell whatever he wanted.
That's crazy.
Maybe he thought, she'd needed tan. Maybe she looked a little pastry. I don't know.
This guy, he came to work today.
Just asking.
He came to work.
Just
All
asking.
right, number 4,
Yes.
Sentiment. It's quite sour.
Yeah.
I don't really have a joke about that, but
No.
consumer sentiment, it remains near levels not seen since the global financial crisis.
Yes.
And this is largely due to the high levels of inflation we talked about earlier that have outpaced wage growth. So investors' optimism is kind of related to that, and that is actually even lower than 2008, 2009, the lowest levels we've seen for 30 years. Now, that sounds really bad, right? Like,
yes,
investors are not optimistic,
Yeah.
consumers are not optimistic.
I mean,
but
back
actually,
to 08, 09, that's
right.
that was a bad time.
But actually, when investors are this pessimistic about the stock market, forward returns are very, very good typically.
Wow.
So it's what we call a contrarian indicator, where it sounds bad, and it is, but it's actually a good thing for forward returns. So that's good.
There you go. So here's a story that could have ended a lot worse than it did. So there was a school out in California, and a janitor was out doing his job, just cleaning and whatever during school, and he noticed a cat wandering into a classroom. Turns out it was a cougar. So it was smaller. It was like a 4 to 6 month old. But
that's
not like a giant.
To make
but
a
it was a
mistake on.
small cougar, and it was wandering in, probably smelled food or whatever. And so he quickly closed the door, trapped it in there, called the authorities, and they came and caught the cougar. Everything was fine. They were going to relocate it, but they found that it had a fractured tooth, so he's got to go to the dentist first before getting re-released into the wild. So, yeah.
Do you know what time that occurred?
Probably at 2:30.
2:30. And last but not least, from me, on May 23rd, the Biden administration announced a dozen Indo-Pacific countries, so that's countries on the other side of the Pacific, near Indonesia, and that Asian area of the world, really. They are joining the U.S. in an economic initiative aimed at countering China's influence on the region. So, unsurprisingly, China, second largest economy in the world, a lot of influence on specifically the economies closest to them,
Yes.
but also really all economies as far as trading partners go. Well, the U.S. and other countries are working to maybe lessen the dependence on China, and a lot of the reason that this has been occurring is, first of all, China has its own many issues, but second of all, they have had some reliability issues in terms of being a supply source for items that have caused supply chain issues, which has contributed to some inflation. So I think that lessening the dependence on them would maybe make them stand up, and change their ways on some of their questionable policies, but also would just hopefully make supply chains overall work a little bit better. And related to China, the country's been largely shut down because they have a COVID-0 policy. They don't like COVID at all. They're not willing to just live with it. Kind of was where most of the rest of the world has gone to at this point. So they were shutting down factories, shutting down cities, shutting down big areas, and this continued to put further disruption on the supply chain, which enhanced the reason for looking at alternatives.
All right. Question for you.
I got an answer.
When I say getting married in Las Vegas, what comes to mind?
Drunk mistake.
Yeah. And Elvis, right? I mean, you think of those Elvis chapels that they have in Las Vegas. Well,
Ross and Rachel.
It's a $2 billion industry, the wedding industry, and those Elvis-themed weddings make up a good chunk of that. Well, they've started receiving cease and desist letters because the company that owns the image of Elvis has started to say, hey, no, can't do that anymore. Can't do Elvis without our permission. Now, they were quoted as saying, we are seeking to partner with each of these small businesses to ensure that their use of Elvis's name, image, and likeness are officially licensed and authorized by the estate so they can continue their operations. In other words,
they're going to charge you. Yeah.
So that's been throwing this whole industry, and they're just coming out of COVID, right? They struggled. There was a lot of problems, obviously people weren't traveling as well as, indoor venues and stuff. So they were just getting back to where they were, and now they get hit with this. And there's a lot of places there that are struggling. $2 billion industry though. Just the wedding
in Vegas.
The Vegas weddings, $2 billion industry. Not Elvis, but the weddings in Vegas, $2 billion industry. Yeah. Elvis makes up a good chunk of that.
That just really it makes me think of Ross and Rachel.
Yeah. Do you know he did get married in Las Vegas? Elvis did. That's part of this whole thing.
Wow.
Not Ross and Rachel. No, sorry. Elvis did.
That was a show, Josh.
I know. It wasn't
real.
That
was not real.
Life. But Elvis did, in real life, get married.
Is that why that's a thing?
Part of it, yes.
Okay.
And then, obviously, his image is tied to Vegas.
Yeah.
He did Viva Las Vegas, and he did shows there. So, yeah.
That's fascinating.
It was interesting to me.
Well, thank you for joining us. As Josh said earlier, Austin Wilson and Josh Robb here with Hixon Zuercher Capital Management, hoping that we provided you some encouragement, some laughs, but also some good news of what happened in May and what we're really going to be seeing here in June. Please remember that nothing we talked about today is a recommendation, but if you have any questions about your financial situation, feel free to give us a call at 419-425-2400. And until next month, have a great summer.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. By the way, I was thinking, as I was looking up dad jokes, I should create a Google search for just jokes.
Oh, yeah.
But rename it Giggle.
Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hixon Zuercher Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any guest are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hixon Zuercher Capital Management. This is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hixon Zuercher Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.